Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I got a 2004 Ford Explorer Sport Trac on the lift. This guy needs two lower ball joints. They're pretty worn. It's gonna be a quick video on how to swap those out. Some tools you're gonna need. You're gonna need a ball joint press. So I'm not doing the whole control arm, which you can do. I'm just gonna do the ball joint itself. So you need a ball joint press to remove and install. These are all the adapters. You're gonna need 8mm. I just use 1/4-inch drive. That's to get the bolt off for the speed sensor on the knuckle. 7/8 socket for the lower ball joint, 3/4 for the lugs, 13 and 15mm. I use these two for the upper ball joint. 13mm to get the brake caliper bolts off, and then 15mm over here. This is to get the caliper bracket off. Sledgehammer. 1.25-inch socket. This is to get the axle nut off. A pair of side cutters. All pretty straightforward, basic hand tools. The ball joint press you can get from the O'Reilly's or AutoZone as a loaner tool, which is what I did here. So this is an EverTough press, and the model number is 67045. So I did do the passenger side already, and here's the one that came out just to get an idea of how much play was in there. You can see that ball coming out of the socket. That's quite a bit of play. If you get to the point where that ball can come out of that socket, as you can imagine, that knuckle right here, the bottom side, if that ball joint were to pop straight off, this knuckle will come right out. So your wheel will come right out. The tie rod's gonna hold it on, so it's probably gonna come out and go like this into your fender, which will be a bad day. So we're gonna swap these out. All right, as you can see, I already got the wheel off. So I'm gonna take this axle nut off while I have everything together. In case I need some leverage, I can put a pry bar in here to hold these studs to stop it from turning. But I'm thinking it's gonna come right out with the impact gun. So the 1.25-inch socket took that right off, and you can just put your thumb on the end and just push the axle forward and make sure it's free before you move on, which it is. Slides nice. So I'm gonna work on taking this caliper off and this caliper bracket off, the mounting bracket. So this will be the back here 13mm bolts. There's one here, one down here, and then holding the mounting bracket on is two 15mm bolts in the backside. All right, I got the caliper off. As you can see, I got it hanging here. Just grab yourself some zip ties. I get a contractor pack that lasts me for years. You can use a coat hanger too. Zip tie the caliper out of the way. Just gonna hang it on the A-arm. Next step, taking off this mounting bracket. All right, I got the caliper mounting bracket off. One thing you want to check is the slide pins. Just make sure they're still free. You're gonna pull these out and clean them up anyway, but if they were really seized in there, there's a good chance you're gonna have to just buy another bracket with a loaded one with new slide pins. And if they are seized, you're probably gonna have uneven wear. As you can see, this was the passenger side I did already. The left side of this rotor, which is the outboard side, see how thin that is compared to the inboard side. Those slide pins were completely seized, so it wasn't allowing the caliper to release, so it was riding heavily on this outboard pad. All right, so we got the braking system out of the way, got the rotor off. It's down on the bench over here. That one looks okay, but I'm gonna recommend doing a full brake job up front. The right side needs to be done anyway. Next step is this upper ball joint. So I'm gonna take off this bolt right here. It's pretty straightforward, 13mm, 15mm. I'm just gonna use the impact and slide it right out. But before I do that, you're gonna wanna get a jack underneath the knuckle and jack this up until you just see this control arm start to move up. Then you'll know you get the tension off of it. Then you can take this bolt out and then slowly release the tension and break that joint free. All right, so I got the jack underneath here. You can use a floor jack if you're doing this on the ground. I got a transmission jack under it. I'm gonna start putting some pressure on it until I see that control arm move, which it is right now. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but I know I have the tension off of it because this has a torsion bar. Doesn't have a coil spring. So I got the tension off. I'm gonna break this, take this nut off this bolt and then drive this bolt out. And then I can break this connection out. I'm gonna end up tapping this with a hammer to free it up. I don't want to damage this boot. I'm not planning on replacing the upper. It's still tight. It looks like it's been done somewhat recently. So as you can see, this bolt has a shoulder and a shank on it. and that it's threaded, try not to, I'm not even gonna say don't try, actually don't whack the end of those threads with a hammer. You can put a nut on it and tap it, but this should be loose enough, both sides are like this, where you can just take your gun. And I was able to push it by hand till the threads hit the chamfer inside, and then now you can just take it right out with the gun. I don't know if you saw that, but it actually did release already. So I don't even think I'm gonna have to hit it with a pickle fork or anything. Take that off. I still got the jack on underneath, but I'm just gonna push up on it. You can see it's already loose. I'm not gonna pop that right up because if I do that, those studs and wheel bearings are gonna hit me right in the chin. So I'm gonna need 2 hands for this. But the next step is I'm gonna release the tension on the jack. That's gonna allow that knuckle to come down. And then I'm gonna pry this off to the side to get that axle out of the hub. That's what it looks like when it releases. You can see that chamfer right there, the bolt rides in to stop that upper ball joint from coming out. That's what holds it in there. So now what I'm gonna do is have this come off to the side, pull it down a little bit, and then I'm gonna push that axle in, which I can't do with one hand. I'm gonna push this axle right out and let it just come over to the side. And then I'm gonna actually tie it up to the upper control arm also, just to get it out of my way while I'm working on this lower ball joint. All right, so get the axle out of the way. As you can see, the tie rod's still connected. I'm not taking that off, I'm keeping that on. I got the axle flopped out into the side, and then I'm just gonna probably wire tie this up. Same thing with the zip ties to the upper control arm to get that out of my way. And next thing I'm gonna start working on is this lower ball joint. All right, I got that axle secured, zip tied out of the way. I got the brake caliper out of the way. The only thing left to do now is I don't want to put any tension on this wheel speed sensor. So I'm going to take this bolt out right here just to free it up. So while I'm working on this lower ball joint and we break this free, I want to make sure I don't put any stress on this cable. So I'm going to take out that 8mm bolt. All right, I got that bolt out. We got plenty of slack. I put the bolt right back in so I don't lose it. Next step is lower ball joint, getting this cotter pin out. And then I'm gonna back this nut off and keep it right at the bottom, not keep it all the way off, but not keep it tight, so that when we put our pickle fork in there, we can actually split this joint. All right, we got the cotter pin out, and as you can see, the castle nut's backed off. It's just flush at the bottom. Plenty of room for us to see if we can get it to drop by, I'm gonna try tapping the bottom of the knuckle first. I'm gonna try tapping it right here. See if I can break it free, but with no pressure from a coil spring or anything. I don't think that's gonna happen. We're gonna end up using the pickle fork, but I'm gonna give it a shot. All right, so the other side, I can tell you where the cotter pin went through the castle nut was perfect. The hole lined right up with the ends of the slots. This one, the cotter pin was kind of down further, and you see how that separated? All I did was lift up so I can get a good angle to tap it with a hammer, and it slid down. So I could tell somebody did some work over here at one time. I'm not 100% sure if this ball joint was ever replaced or not. But that didn't really seem right to me. But anyway, keep moving forward. I'll take that nut off, get this guy off and off to the side, and we can start pressing out this ball joint. All right, here's the play on the driver's side. It's about the same, could be a little bit worse. I can tell you that these 2 ball joints are different styles. So one of them's probably original, which I'm thinking the passenger side. And this driver's side was replaced once with a cheap unit. But either way, it's coming out. All right, next step, we're gonna get this grease fitting off, and then we're gonna get this snap ring out of there. You are gonna need a set of snap ring pliers. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. Get that snap ring out of there, then we can press this guy down. All right, as you can see, we get the grease fitting off. So now we have some way to put the press. We got the snap ring out. Now we got left to do, I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit, and then we'll get the ball joint press in place so we can pop this guy out. This is an interference fit. I have seen guys use air hammers to get them out, but we're gonna use the press today. All right, so the press is pretty straightforward. You got this one ring here. You want it to be a big enough ID for the ball joint to fit through, because you're gonna be pressing through it. So that'll go under here. So now this is just touching on the inside, the steel of the control arm, not the ball joint. And then Underneath that, you're gonna grab that adapter, and that hole in the middle is big enough for this ball joint to go through. So you stack those two together. There, now we're sitting pretty square. You can see the ball joint kind of sticking through. So when I put the press on top, the hole of the bottom of the press is gonna go around the ball joint here, and then the press is gonna go up top, and we're gonna drive that down. Just to get an idea, it's gonna be like this. So you got the whole bottom of the this out of the way. It's tough to do with one hand, but the bottom of the ball joint is gonna go through that hole, and then this is gonna sit just like that. If you can imagine that, right on there, and then this is gonna push the ball joint down through the control arm. I'll get this set up, and you'll get a better idea. All right, so hopefully this makes more sense. So I'm gonna put an impact gun on here. This is threaded. It's gonna push down on this ball joint, and it's gonna push it through the lower control arm because this cup is on the outside of the ball joint. And if I go underneath and you got that adapter, if you see the hole, it's big enough for the ball joint to fit through. So hopefully that makes sense. But once you get the tool in hand, it will make sense to you. All right, see if I can get a video of me cranking down on this thing. So get the impact on, see what happens here. Almost there. That's it. All right, so we got the joint out. Next thing you want to do is clean this hole up, which I already did. Just a rag and some brake cleans your friend. All right, so here's a new ball joint. It's a Moog product, the K8695T. I always use these problem solvers. They're just built very well, and they usually solve whatever weakness is found in the OEM joints. This is where you don't want to skimp out. Definitely buy a Moog or better joint. It's just a lot of work, and you don't want to do this again in 40,000 miles. So here's the joint, new snap ring, grease fitting, castle nut, and cotter pin. So the install, obviously this is going to go in from the bottom. You want your press, those cups, to go on this outer ring if possible. I don't have a ring that's going to fit it. It's actually going to go on this step right here, which is very stout. I already did the other side, and it went in without issue. But in a perfect world, you'd be catching this shoulder here, not here. But these are very stout. I don't have an issue with that. So you're going to have the cup on there like that, and then you're going to have the press underneath that cup, and on the top, you're going to have another, let's see if I can lay this. You're going to have another one of these collars on the top to allow the joint to come up through. So you need this ID to be bigger than this OD to give room for it to go up. So when you have this all clamped on, it's going to drive the bottom up through this cup, if that makes sense. Again, I'll get it set up and I'll show you what we're looking at. All right, so we're all set to drive this in. As you can see, this cup is a lot bigger than the diameter of the ball joint so that it can go up and through. This is an adapter plate that's actually has a small ID up here. It's almost closed for this to sit on. So this is actually pressing this down. There is no hole there. It's just step for it to sit there. So it's pushing this down, which in return is going to pull this up. So this is actually pushed right against the ball joint. So it's going to have no choice but to drive this up and through, if that makes sense. But this is all set up. You want to take your time here, getting this nice and square. You don't want to ruin the control arm, or you end up having to do a control arm because of a bad interference fit. So when this is seated, before you put that snap ring on, that ball joint should be snug in there. It shouldn't drop out. All right, let's get the air gun on there. Leaking by, of course. So I'm gonna try driving this up. See if you can see it in action. See it come up. The last little bit, I'm gonna go in there with a flashlight, see what I have for a gap. But I really want to pay attention that I'm not over torquing this joint, because that is the socket to the ball, so we don't want to distort that at all. All right, so the new joint's in. As you can see the snap ring groove is high enough to get the snap ring in. And then the next thing you want to do is go underneath and look at the, right where that shoulder meets the control arm, make sure there's no gap, which there's not. So it's seated nice and flush, it's not cocked. So we're good there. And the last thing I like to do is just grab the actual joint and just make sure there's no steps and no skips. It is going to be firm. It's firm right from the factory. But yeah, we're looking good. So we're going to reverse the process and put this thing back together. Next step's a new snap ring. Snap ring is in. Now I'm going to pull this cap and put in the new grease fitting. All right, grease fitting's in. I always like to point these towards the rear of the vehicle, just so road debris splashing up doesn't get stuck in this fitting. And another tip that's very important, you're doing the right thing putting grease in there, but make sure it's very clean before you even stop pumping grease. You push any debris inside of there, you just shot yourself in the foot. All right, next step, again, reversing the process. I'm going to cut that cable tie for the hub. I'm going to get that ball joint into the hub and just get a nut loosely on there. Then I'm going to cut the tie for the axle, get the axle into the hub, and then I could start working on getting the upper ball joint loosely fitted. And then we can start tightening and torquing everything down. All right, I got that lower nut just on a couple threads. I'll cut the cable tie for the axle and fish that into the hub. As you can see, we're loosely fitted, got the axle in there. Everything's just loose. So now I'm gonna get this upper control arm into the hub and then get that pinch bolt in. Then we can start torquing everything down. All right, so I got everything loosely in place. So I'm gonna start tightening and torquing these bolts down. I'm gonna start with the lower ball joint. I'm gonna tighten this down, torque it to 129 foot-pounds. And then I'm gonna tighten this up, torque this upper ball joint to 38 foot-pounds. And then the axle nut, I'm gonna tighten up and torque it to 184 foot-pounds. All right, guys, well, that's a wrap. I'm gonna stop here. I gotta order some brakes. I'm still gonna do a front brake job. This is the passenger side, but I think you get the idea of how to do the lower ball joints. The uppers, you end up doing the complete control arm. You don't press them out. So you definitely need to do a front end alignment when you do uppers. I'm gonna recommend doing it front end alignment, even just doing the lower. Just the tire wear on this, it needs it anyway. But hopefully this helped. If it did help, and you find these videos helpful, please think about subscribing and liking this video. It helps me out tremendously. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.